Hari Om. Greetings from Niagara Falls. During the summer, I get to be with a lot of high school students, college students, and recent college graduates who are getting into their professions. And so as I interact with them, I ask them to tell me about their job title, their job description. So they're working in finance or they're working in medicine, and this is what they're focusing on. Now, that's very specific to that recent graduate. It's not specific to you or to me or to the next person. What is universal amongst all of us, though, is we all have the same role, and that is to seek. And we all have the same responsibility, and that is to serve. To seek and to serve. Going to high school, going to college, that doesn't directly help one in actually being able to follow through with this role and responsibility. What one needs is a role model for one to model those responsibilities, to model that role. And that is the efficacy of our mentorship sangha, where we have those with more experience in this universal role and responsibility who are guiding those who want more experience in this role and responsibility. Please reflect on this lots. Whatever your job title is, your job description is, you can probably figure it out in an ad hoc way. But when it comes to this universal role and responsibility, that's not possible. One needs mentorship. I was sharing with my children today that it was around 20 years ago that I was dropped off at the Toronto airport and then flew to Rome, switched planes, and then flew to Mumbai. And then got off that plane and took a taxi to the ashram, and it was the middle of the night, and I went to my room and unpacked, and the next day I was wandering around the ashram in my cargo pants and blue plaid shirt, not knowing where I am and what I'm supposed to do. While at the ashram, I came across a teaching. That teaching is Sharira Madhyama Kalu Dharma Sadhana. Sharira Madhyama Kalu Dharma Sadhana. In English, this means one can only follow dharma on account of this body. Without the body, one can't follow dharma. An example of this is when we're asleep, there's no dharma for us. There's nothing that we can follow when we're asleep. That's how important this body is. But now there's a more rigorous interpretation of this teaching that one can only follow dharma on account of this body. What is also shared is this is the only use of this body, and that is to follow dharma, facilitate dharma. In other words, this body is a means, this body is a vehicle, this body is a tool. And without interpreting and feeling these teachings, if I were to ask you, who are you? You'll start to describe your height and your weight and your skin color and texture and so on and so forth. We are fortunate that in our community, such profound teachings are interpreted for us to practice, not just from teachers, but from our own community members who have an expertise in their professions towards the relationship with the body, but also are trying their best to have a relationship with the body and more using Vedanta towards this universal responsibility of being a server and this university role of being a seeker. Looking forward to the rest of our workshop. Team?
Hi, Yamal. It is my pleasure today to introduce Pooja. Pooja is a family medicine doctor who has worked with many large hospital systems, including the Cleveland Clinic, worked with our veterans through the VA, and is now part of a private practice in Cleveland, Ohio. Through her work, she has worked with patients of all ages and backgrounds and has learned how viewing oneself can impact the health, mental well-being, and productivity throughout a person's life. On a personal level, Pooja is a seeker, a daughter, a mother, and a wife. She has found profound meaning by connecting with others and believes that helping others is the best way to help oneself. I'd like to welcome Pooja.
Thank you, Nehaji. Hari Om and Pranam. I'm Pooja. I'm going to go through the lecture we've put together with the team's help today. I'm just looking at body image and how we view ourselves and changing it to be a more positive relationship with ourselves and how to make it more useful through our lifetime. So I'm going to share some slides. If you have questions or thoughts as we're going, please share in the chat or raise your hand. You're all giving up the end of your Sunday night to be here. I'd rather that this be a useful hour for you. If I'm talking and you've zoned out or you have a question and we don't get to it, it wasn't a useful hour for you. And I'm sure if you're wondering something, I guarantee someone else in the room has the same thought and they'll be happy that you asked it as well. So I am going to share this presentation here. I'm just double checking everyone can see a slide says Beyond the Mirror in slideshow format. Great. All right, so this is just today, August 17th, Beyond the Mirror, seeing the self clearly. So as far as what we're going to go through today, we'll review our preconceptions and biases about the body, who we should be and how we should be. We'll look at how our views of ourselves affect those around us. And we'll work on shifting the focus more towards being a healthy body, a healthy person, and also less towards how we appear and more towards the purpose of the body, really remembering who we truly are as an Atma or Atman and what the body was given to us to accomplish. So in terms of preconceptions and biases, most of us know what these words are, but we're looking to see what do we subconsciously notice of others and what do we subconsciously notice about ourselves. I will often say that whatever we see in ourselves the most, whatever we are nervous about or dislike or wish we could change, we tend to project that on others and really notice others. If they have a bigger nose than I do, a smaller nose than I do, are they taller, are they shorter? And we often compare them to ourselves without even realizing that we're doing it. So one thing I'm going to start off with is just on a personal note, sharing a photo of my family. So this is myself, my son Arjun, and my husband Sunil. And this was my son 2 years ago. And so I just want to ask the group whether you want to share in the chat or just answer for yourself. As you look at the three of us and our physical appearances, what are the things that stand out to you, or what do you notice about my body, my husband's body, and my son's body? And take a few seconds if you want to share in the chat or come off mute, feel free. Otherwise, at least make a note for yourself. Give you a few more seconds on this photo, then we're going to go to another one. So this is a photo of me and my son in India this summer at Mukutam. And I'm just holding him in some night light with a bright photo flash on us. And are there things about my body or my son's body that you notice even more in this photo compared to the last photo? Cool pants. I like that comment. Yes, my son did love being in India. He had a great time. All of the pampering and all of the food and snacks. So you guys are all being very nice and kind. So I wanted to show that when I see friends and they see photos of themselves or loved ones, they often will zone in on the one part of the photo that they think everyone is staring at. And they'll say, don't post that photo or take it off the family WhatsApp group. Everyone can see my blah. And whatever that is about ourselves, I guarantee 99% of the world doesn't actually notice or care about, but we see that over and over. So the one difference I'm going to show you on my son's body that I view as a positive, but some people in the world may not, is how he views, or how some people might view his ear. So my son was born with a condition called microtia. So on his left ear, he doesn't have a normal external ear. He doesn't have a hole that enters the outside world into where your brain would be to conduct sound. So the ear is a different shape and there's no opening there. And now, if my son was self-conscious of his photo or of his ear, he might say, "Mom, don't share this photo. Look, all anyone will ever see is my ear in this photo. Oh my goodness." And we have made sure to really raise him with lots of love and positivity about his ear. We call it his lucky ear. His right ear is his boring ear. We talk about his super cool hearing aid, and we bring it up all the time. If I'm playing with him or teasing him, I'm like, "I'm pulling on your lucky ear today," or "I have this big meeting, I'm nervous. Can I touch your lucky ear before work?" And we've brought it up so much that he points it out when he meets new people. "Have you met me? Have you seen my super cool hearing aid? My name is Arjun." Like that's the order in which he introduces himself to people. And I want that for him. I never want him to be in a position where he looks at his differences and goes, "I'm embarrassed," or "I wish I was like everybody else." And I point this out on a personal level because I have friends who would look at this photo if it was their body and would say, "Oh, don't post that. My arm is in the forefront. Pooja's arm looks fatter in that photo. Don't share that one." Or on the next photo I'll move to, this to me is a happy family photo. But we did have one relative who saw this photo. We'd shared it in our family. And when he was younger, Arjun had a headband that held his hearing aid up. And they went, "All anyone can see is he has a headband. And why is a boy wearing a headband? Take it down." I was like, "I don't think anyone notices the headband. But if they do, who cares? We're happy." To me, they captured a spontaneous moment of us tickling him. But I really think, how you view yourself affects you, and it also affects everyone around you. If I was self-conscious of Arjun's ear, like when he took his school photo, he would change how he sat and hide his left ear or hide the hearing aid. Arjun doesn't think that way. So when the school photos came around last year, this was the school photo he took, and he sat, and it happened to be that his left ear was the one facing the camera, and he wanted it on the fridge, and we had it on the fridge up through Christmas. And I like that for him, it's not that he has to show it off, but it's also not that he cares that he needs to hide it. And that's the goal I want all of us to have with our bodies as we reach the end of today, is we're proud of who we are, not in a "I'm better than everyone else" way, I should show off, but also not in a self-conscious way of, "Oh, I wish I was that way. I wish I was this other way." Um, so what we're going to talk about next is just the words that we use when we reference our own bodies and our own selves, because it not only changes subconsciously how you view yourself, but everyone who's in your world hears you say these things, and it subconsciously affects them as well. Especially, I think, as mentors and mentees, we affect each other very subtly in a repetitive way. If we are around our nieces, our nephews, our kids, even our parents, if we speak of ourselves negatively, they hear those words and they begin to have some similar self-judgments. I know a lot of Indians, including myself, often talk about, "Oh, I was so tan. Oh, I got so dark. I wish I had worn more sunblock at the pool. I'm tan too much." Or I'm trying on clothes. The first thing I might look at is my belly. And so I was visiting my sister and my niece, who's 9, and I was trying on clothes at Macy's with her, and I kept looking at my stomach. "Is this flattering? Is it not flattering?" And I noticed my niece, who's 9, was trying on a dress, and she asked me if she looked fat. And I went, "Oh my God, I need to be more careful when I'm around her. I shouldn't do this anyway, but especially when she's looking at me." And we also just comment on our own body, our hair, our acne, our body position, and our posture. And so just really being mindful of the words we use, even if it's in passing, or if it's more of our body language and how we reference ourselves, especially younger people, whether it's teenagers or mentees or kids, they're really watching and learning from us. One tip Vivekji had mentioned at one of our prior classes was when he's interacting with seekers, he tries to focus on looking at their eyes. And if you're looking at someone's eyes and above, you're engaging with that person. You're seeing what they're feeling. Are they listening? Where they are in that day? But you've stopped there. If you go below that, at smile, at skin, at clothing, then subconscious judgment can and often does, I'd say for most of us, come in. So if you find yourself being out in a workplace or out in a social gathering, and you're noticing yourself either being judged or judging others, or even feeling self-conscious of how others are viewing you, focus on everyone's eyes and then try not to go below that and practice that for a day or two. I did that especially when I was in India this summer with my family. I love my family, but Indians, we tend to be judgy, especially about, body size and things. You're either too healthy or too skinny, and, it's hard to be right. Just saying, I'm going to look at your eyes. And as you do it more and more, they often do the same. And yes, it was a slideshow of you not showing. I can do that from the currents. Thank you for correcting me. Um, so the other thing I wanted to mention is when we talk about ourselves, again, changing this from a negative to a positive view, is we can also make this a positive message we give out. So when we're talking to people, like young girls and women especially, we don't say, wow, your daughter's so pretty. Wow, your daughter's so smart, so strong. I don't let people tell Arjun, he's gotten so big, he's so strong. I say, look at how smart and kind he is. I remember when I was in Chicago, I was my early 30s, and my niece, who was in her late teens at the time, was visiting us. We spent the whole weekend doing things outside, and I got quite dark. And I was telling her, like, I got so dark, and I should have worn more sunblock. And I was doing those words. And she said, Bua, you have a milk chocolate tan. You are just now maybe a little more dark chocolate. You still look delicious. And I've always remembered that phrase because she was so genuine. As a teenager who I would have assumed would be self-conscious, she went, no, you're delicious. Just change the words. And I think of her in the summer now. When I am traveling or I'm on vacation, I should be safe. I should use sun protection for cancer prevention, but I don't need to care if my skin color is changing. And especially around my son, my niece, those people, I really want to make sure I only use positive words about my skin color, whether I'm light or dark, it doesn't matter. I often tell my son, I'm wearing makeup so I can feel fancy, not to look prettier, but I want to look fancy for this party or this work meeting. You want to work out to make your heart stronger, make your muscles stronger, not because you're trying to lose weight. As you say these things, it might feel a little fake at first. It will help them, but it will also help you because you will say it more and more, and then you'll also start to believe it more and more. Before I go on to the next section, any questions, burning thoughts? I'm very glad, Deepaji, that you mentioned the slideshow was not in view properly. So as far as shifting our focus, we really want to think about using the body both to be healthy, and then we'll also talk about how to really focus on using the body as a tool, more as a place where the Atman lives or works through. For the first part, when we're looking at health, there are many compartments of health, and I'll go over them in as much detail as we have time for today. But the big picture here is if you look at a garden tool and you leave all of your tools outside for gardening in the rain and in the sun and in the winter, they'll get rusty, they'll get weaker, and they're harder to use. That's kind of how you want to view health. How do I keep myself active, fit enough that I can be a productive member of society, use this body, and just feel good? I'm going to cover as much as I can within the 6 main portions of this. If you have highlights or questions, ask. I will share the slides at the end as well, so you can take the details home with you. As you're listening to each slide, please pay attention to the areas you want to work on. And I would encourage you to pick one thing you want to work on changing. If you take notes at each slide or at each conversation and you try to achieve it all, you are more than likely going to fail. When you want to work on being healthier, it's easier to have a small bite-sized goal. Practice that little goal for 3 weeks or longer until it becomes not only something you're not thinking about automatic, but also enjoyable, easy, and part of your daily lifestyle. If this is a crash course and you're making a change for 2 weeks, then you go back to your slouchy habits, that doesn't change anything. But if you make a small change and you find that it's something you can sustain and it's part of your day-to-day life and you enjoy it, you're likely to do it for 20, 30, 60 years, and that's much more beneficial. So everyone always asks about nutrition. I know in my office as a primary care doctor, I get lots of questions about this. The initial step is switch your focus to food as fuel not food as pleasure, relaxation, joy, stress relief. I think this is very cultural, especially in America. I think we watch TV growing up and we see people celebrating with food. People are sad and they have food. People are really stressed out and they need to indulge in this food. If we remove that association, this becomes much easier to maintain and have healthy habits on a regular basis. I'm going to leave the slide up here for you to glance at. It goes over the general breakdown of what you need to have in your day in terms of fruits and veggies and grains and protein. Aside from the triathlon runners who are in my life, no one else measures the ounces of grains they eat each day. So I think this is a little less useful, but I did include it for the sake of completeness. But if you look at your day-to-day nutrition, it's easier to think of your plate at each meal and how you break it down. So I tell most patients, and I try to live myself, when you're using a plate, think of half the plate as being vegetables, a quarter is protein, and then the quarter is carb. If you are still hungry and you go back for second helpings, try to make the vegetables what you get second helpings of. It's also helpful to think of using smaller plate sizes. They've done a lot of medical studies across many cultures, and they've shown that if you use a smaller physical bowl or plate, also a smaller spoon, you end up feeling full faster and noticing when you're 80% full, not when you're overstuffed. The ideal medical goal at each meal is to be 80% full, not 100% full. And if you stop yourself there and then you have water, you should get everything that you need at each meal. In Japan in particular, the culture is to have many small bowls or plates with small servings in each of them. It may be less than you would normally pile onto a big plate if you have it, but by having that feeling of lots of small bowls and plates in front of you, you feel like you're eating a lot of food. A trick that I use in our house is my son and husband use the big plates, the American like 9-inch plates, and I typically use the salad plate as my dinner plate. And that way I can sit with them. I just don't need to eat as much as my husband does. And I've learned that over the 20 years we've been together. So if we think of the Indian thali that many of us have in our homes, the first thing you want to put on your plate is the vegetables. So I put in just a sabzi, and then in this case, we often do salad at home, but whatever that is for you, start with the vegetables. Then you can do your carbs, so roti or rice. You don't want to do both with each meal. And then you want to add your protein. So on this slide, I put in like a dal and a dahi or yogurt. And again, meat is fine, non-meat is fine, depending on what you believe in and what your family follows. But really looking at the plate as a whole, where you have half vegetable, a quarter protein, and then a quarter carb. And as you get used to doing this more and more, you'll enjoy the meals like this, but also you'll find that you're not as hungry. Studies show after 3 days of getting enough vegetable and water intake, your body gets the nutrients it needs, and then it's craving less food. At each meal, you're not as hungry, and you're also not reaching for snacks in between because you just don't need it. Our bodies are relatively smart, and they typically crave more intake if they don't have the nutritional value that they need. You'll notice that I don't talk about fruits as much on these slides. Fruits are good for you. I encourage them, even for diabetics. Typically, unless you're uncontrolled, 1 fruit a day is usually okay. However, if you get enough vegetables, you don't have to have fruit. You can't have fruit and not have vegetable. That reverse is generally not sufficient nutritional intake. But if you're finding either budget is difficult, shopping for fresh items is difficult, and keeping it in your fridge before it goes bad is hard, focus on the vegetables first and then add fruits. And I often do it as a dessert or as a pleasure or as a snack. Again, good. I'm not naysaying fruits, but if you have to choose which goal to start with, the vegetables are the much more important part. And then again, water intake, I wouldn't focus so much on the ounces. This is the medical goal. It does vary depending on which journal you're reading, but enough where you feel hydrated, your urine should be clear, but you also just don't feel as hungry or as thirsty all the time. A trick at the beginning of having a healthy diet is if you think you're hungry, but you shouldn't be, like I've had a good meal, I've eaten well for 2 days, I'm feeling hungry, your brain signals often misread thirst for hunger. Because back in caveman days, we were searching for sources of water, and oftentimes it was things like fruits, hydration through nutrition. So your brain might not be interpreting your body's signal correctly. And that's a common thing we see, especially in women, especially around your menstrual cycle as well. Posture is one thing I find people tend to ignore when they look at health. When you're looking at your body posture, if you're sitting up straight, for one thing, it does help with things like back pain. It also helps with self confidence, pausing, where your mental calmness tends to be as well. And I would say when you're interacting with peers or in a workplace or family, it also makes you be perceived a little differently by the other person. And that can again feed forward in a positive way into your mental health or productivity. When you're looking at posture, the line I tend to remember is shoulders down, chin up, and think tall. That's pulling your spine upright to think tall. And typically, these are the three, sentences or phrases you can say to yourself if you find that you're slouching or you're someone who tends to hunch over a keyboard all day long. There are some products out there that I've seen a lot of patients, especially lean on or buy to help with posture. For women, they can be things like these posture correctors. So, bras that tend to be very tight, shoulder straps or harnesses that hold you back. We don't encourage them. The main reason is while they do force you to sit up straight, they are forcing you there. They're not teaching your muscles how to engage and be stronger. The key is you want to use your core as well as your back muscles, and you want to keep them engaged or tightened. You want this to become muscle memory. Roll your shoulders back, engage your upper and lower core, and engage your middle to lower back. And if you do this regularly, then it becomes automatic. Your muscle memory just sits like that when you sit down or when you stand up. The forced posture correctors don't teach your body this, and in some ways, they can actually weaken your shoulder and core muscles. If you do want a reminder to yourself, one thing that you can use is either a visual reminder, so like a sticker on your laptop or your desk, or family and friends can lovingly encourage you. I personally struggle with posture, so I use what's called the Upright 2. I have no stake in this company, I'm not buying or selling, but I find in my busy day, this is something I needed external help for. So this is the website, this little white thing on her back. Either you can use an adhesive or a string to have it sit on your upper back. It connects to an app on your phone and it just senses your posture. And if you begin to slouch, it vibrates almost like your phone might vibrate very slightly. And then it reminds you, oh, I need to sit back up. I found when I use it after about a week or so, I naturally begin to sit straighter without wearing it. I will say for me, I'm at the point where if I stop using it after a few weeks, I tend to slouch again. So I am using it regularly. But I found for me, I needed this physical reminder because I just tend to slouch. And I've worn white coats for years and the pockets are heavy and that's my, blaming of an external item for why I do that. But I find that when I use this white sensor in the back, it battles my white coat hunch. It makes it simpler. I
Pooja,
think
we have
that's,
a few questions. I know you said you would like
yeah,
to have the questions come in
please.
as we go. Okay, so the first question is nutrition wise, does it matter if vegetables are fresh or frozen? And added to that is canned.
So the easy answer is canned is typically not as healthy, especially that most canned foods have a higher sodium content or salt content. And typically the canned foods go through a preserving process that does leach some nutrition out. That being said, I know in my house we do use canned vegetables for certain recipes, and it simply comes down to certain vegetables go bad so fast if I buy them fresh. I know myself and I won't use them. The canned is the way I'll actually get the vegetable in my diet. So while fresh is better, vegetables is better than no vegetable. When you're looking at frozen vegetables, certain brands flash freeze their vegetables. And from the studies that I have seen, those are equally healthy as regular vegetables that you might get fresh from a produce section. The key is for it to be flash frozen, which means they don't typically sit in preservatives before they freeze them. I know Green Giant is a brand my family relies on a lot when we get frozen vegetables, especially we do frozen cauliflower that's pre-seasoned and frozen broccoli that's pre-seasoned. I throw it into a pan, put it into the air fryer or the oven after work, and it's a great vegetable dish that's easy and pre-made. Um, but again, the summary would be yes, fresh is always ideal, but you also have to make it sustainable. And I know for me, on a Monday, Tuesday, after shopping on the weekend, I can do fresh. By the time Friday rolls around, my asparagus is just going to be slimy and gross. And if I can get it frozen, I'll actually cook with it.
We have another question too from Sudarshan.
I am Pooja. Yeah, thanks so much for this presentation. I just had a question about one thing that you were talking about and Vivek was talking about. I'd say for the last like 6 or 8 months, I've had like a recurring like immunity issues and like kind of like a long-term like partial congestion kind of thing. And I've gone to like lots of like doctors, like at university and here, and I've made like a lot of like lifestyle changes, but it doesn't seem to be like anything is really changing. And so, and in some ways, like while it's forced a lot of like positive like lifestyle changes, like getting off the microwave and then like spicing all my foods and making a lot of fresh food and off of like no more canned, not really eating out and all sorts of stuff. It's also like um it's almost like a lot of thoughts are now going to the body and to food and to like making sure that like health is secured, in a way that is almost like focusing a lot on the functional and rather than what those thoughts could be used for. So just wondering with your experience as a doctor, just wondering what are ways that I can have more faith in a time like that, when it seems like your health is out of your control, as well as how to focus on should be more important than the body when the body is seems to be like in turbulent times. Anyway.
Sudarshanji, I'll do my best to answer. And of course, there's many people on here who are more experienced than me, and they're welcome to give you a better answer as well. To answer the first question about nutrition and looking at the body as a whole, that is important if you feel like you're not getting an answer from your regular doctor. I think it's good to look at nutrition, look at sleep and stress level, and then simple things like, have you cleaned your air filters? If you live in a big building, are they cleaning the HVACs? Do you have an air filter in your room? Things like that that can be small triggers as well. I know where we are in the Midwest, the Canada wildfires cause quite a bit of smoke and congestion. So looking at the small triggers that maybe we're forgetting about can be one option. Typically, for getting protein and vegetables in some form each day, you're probably not missing nutrition that's leading to those issues. Assuming that, especially if vegetarians, B12 and your hemoglobin levels are checked to rule out anemia. And then as far as faith in the body, I always say control what you can control. And once you've done that, know that God is looking at you and looking after you. And if there is something that you're struggling with, there may be a reason or a lesson in that for later in life. Do the best you can, and then just try to release it and let it go, not worrying about it or holding on to it. I'm going to assume, I believe you're in college from what I remember from our previous interactions. This is going to sound paternalistic, but it only gets worse. I'm almost 40 and you wake up and things just hurt and you go, why? What did I do? And sometimes it's an hour and sometimes it's 3 days. And I was doing running for the Mind with Vivekji and the team, and then my knee was killing me and I had to stop running, and it turned out I developed a ganglion cyst in the head of my gastroc. How? Why? No idea. Stopped running for 2 months and it went down. So sometimes it's do what you can, seek help from those who know what they're talking about, and then just try to say, there must be a reason. I will trust and have faith and move on. I hope that helps. Were there any other questions?
I think good for now, Pooja. Yeah, thank you.
We'll keep going, and then again, feel free to jump in. Thank you for letting me know about the questions. So exercise, again, I kept this short for the sake of time. You can talk about this for 3 or 4 lectures alone. The big picture is to do a mix of cardio and weight training. On an average, for someone who's not active now, your goal is to do it about twice a week. What you do, there's a lot of studies out there about how you can frame them, how you can mix them. The base thing is you want to achieve a sweat and or not easily be able to speak during that workout. So again, I love my mother. She was going to the gym every day, and I was watching her walk the track leisurely, and she was talking to a friend or on the phone the whole time, and she would come out and she's totally dry and there's no sweat. You might feel great at the end of that, but you're not actually working out. You went for a stroll. Whereas my nanny, who's 88 and is an amazing human, I was visiting her this summer in India, and she's going for her morning walk, and she's speed walking around in the heat, and she's holding those packets of milk you get in India in each hand to use as her weights, and she's pumping them and walking. she wasn't sweating, but she also couldn't easily speak while maintaining that pace. So I would say one or the other, if you're someone who isn't already working out, is always just a good trigger of, am I doing enough? Is this good enough for me? And again, what Sudarshan can do and what I can do may be very different just based on our bodies and our current activity level. So if you're not working out, this is a good way to start. I always say, again, start small and achievable and then build up slowly. If you build on success, you'll feel good about yourself and you'll keep doing it. If you say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week at 5 a.m. and I'm going to do it starting tomorrow, odds are either you won't do it or you won't do it for very long. If you start with 2 minutes of jumping jack at your lunch break, where your computer is, and you just do that for 2 minutes, and then you build it to 5, and then you buy a jump rope and you do it from your home office. Jump roping is seriously difficult. Doing it for a minute is a great workout, and figuring out how to squeeze it into your day in sustainable little ways is often easier than having this big lofty goal of a gym or a class if it's not already part of your routine, and then building up to a bigger goal, whatever that is for you. Now focusing kind of on the other half of really looking at the body the way it was intended to be, which is a tool. So a few phrases that have always stuck with me is really use the body as a tool as it was intended, live a purposeful and productive life. At the end of the day, 100 years from now, everyone on this call will be dead. Our bodies will be gone. Our families may not remember us, but if we help others and make a difference, that impact will hopefully be there. And that's just sort of a reality check of why am I worrying so much about this acne breakout or whatever this is that I'm worrying about. My purpose is to help others and to make a difference as much as I can. A few phrases again from Art and Mission School. The body is not me, the body is mine. Vivekji has used this analogy, I believe Chimanandaji did as well. The car is the driver. The car is not the driver, I'm sorry. So if you look at yourself sitting in a car, going on a road trip, the car is the vehicle getting you to the destination. You in the car are the true self. The car by itself has no purpose or meaning. The same idea for your body. The Atma is you inside. It's driving the body. The body is the vehicle to get you through life, but it's not the ends. It's more the means. And then depending on where you are and how you view life, one or all of the true purposes may apply for you. So using the body as a tool for seva, using it as a vehicle for growth, for becoming higher than when you were born before your next life, using as a temple to house the divine self. So does Krishna live within me? So I must take care of my body to respect Krishna. Or simply at a basic level, I must bring joy and care for others and help others. And that's the purpose of my body. So I think for each of us, depending on where you are, typically 1, 2, or all 4 of these apply. And what applies may change as we go through our life's journey as well. The ladder of fall is something that we've covered in our classes together. I won't go through it in great detail, but just applying it to the body and how we think of it. If we forget our true nature, we forget our true identity. We forget that we are not the body, we have a body. We think of ourselves as the material self. I am Pooja. I am a 4'11", person. I do weigh 108 pounds. I am this dark skin. We then have attachment to my body. I am Pooja. I should not weigh 110 pounds. I should have been 5'3". I should have curly hair and not straight hair. When we have the attachment to ourselves, we have a desire to be a certain way, whether that's more internally or from the external sources in terms of approval or fitting in. We get angry when we fail or fall short, or someone else has something more than we do. We have the delusion of thinking my appearance is worthy. If I achieve this weight, I will finally be happy. We forget our divine nature. We have this loss of discrimination. We make harmful choices. And from a medical perspective, this is where we start to see things like the anorexia, the bulimia, the anxiety, things like that start to prop up more at the seventh rung, I should say. But then get ruined with self-judgment, spiritual stagnation, being discontent and angry and irritable. This is, again, one version of the ladder of fall. I will definitely preface this by saying I am a beginner seeker. For anyone who doesn't already, look at Vivekji's classes online. This is the link for Meaningful Mornings. This ladder of fall was covered in chapter 2, verses 62 and 63, I believe. And you can use these links to watch the YouTube recordings, which are online. or email our team for Meaningful Mornings and other class information. It's a really useful way of looking at our scriptures and how to apply it in today's day and age in Kali Yuga, and how to live a life that's more meaningful. And then again, just wrapping it up, figuring out how to have self-care without the ego. I want to focus on my nutrition and rest and cleanliness so I have a healthy body, not so I can look or be a certain way or be perceived a certain way. I want to go from how do I look to what can I give, and remembering that I have a body, that this body is not truly who I am. A couple of plugs at the end is we do have our town hall coming up on Tuesday at 9. I know I've gotten a lot out of these classes, both from the parenting classes, the morning classes, the meditation classes. And so I'd encourage anyone who is curious just to look at the Zoom call. The highlights are there. I think there's a lot that we can gain from this. And then a selfish plug is in Cleveland, we have our new Life Gurukula in Akron, and we have our Devi or Women's Retreat specifically for our women. This will be here hosted in October. And if you are interested, please reach out to our team or use the QR code. Again, I'll be sharing the slides. Devis are welcome to attend, and all of our sevaks are welcome to come and do seva or participate and help in terms of food, driving, things like that for this retreat as well. If you have questions, we don't get to it today, or you don't want to ask in the group, this is my personal email. Feel free to reach out. If you can put Jinmya Mission or something in the subject line, I know it's not spam, and I will do my best to respond within 72 hours. Reach out for as much or as little as might be helpful for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pooja, for that presentation. I took down a bunch of notes, and I think we do have a few questions. If anyone else has a question, if you can please raise your hand. If you want to ask a question privately, you can message me directly, and I can ask on your behalf. But there was a question in the chat earlier. It said, I have heard paneer is not good to eat every day, and dal has a lot of carbs. Also, is it okay to have ghee?
All good questions. So paneer, if that is your main source of fat and cholesterol, in moderation, it is okay to have once a day. However, moderation would be, again, a few ounces, not fried, but like air fried or grilled with very little oil. And that would be your main source of healthy fat. If you're having that and then you're putting ghee on your roti and other things, then yes, maybe not every day. The key is just remembering it has fat and cholesterol. It is essentially cheese on a certain level. Dal does have carbohydrates. It is one of the healthiest versions of protein out there. Dal chawal, especially things like mung dal with chawal, is a complete meal in terms of your micro and macronutrients. So I think that's reasonable to enjoy. And just remembering that with the dal, then you want to portion your rice or your roti appropriately. I know my nani, again, I learn a lot from her. She does dal with just either dahi or raita. So yogurt with spices and vegetables or plain yogurt without any carb at night. Because she goes, well, I'm going to bed. I don't need energy. I don't need carbs at night. I do breakfast and lunch. So figuring out your overall portion. Again, if you're an uncontrolled diabetic, so if your hemoglobin A1C is between 8 and 10, you want to be very careful with this and talk to your doctor. And if your hemoglobin A1C is above 10, then there's a lot of reasons to cut out carbs in many forms. And then I would speak with your doctor more personally about the amount of carbohydrates in each version of dal, because within the dals, there are a huge variance about how much carb. Ghee, again, it is pure fat. It is better than butter. It is the clarified ghee that we get, but in moderation. So I would say in my house, we use from Trader Joe's spray olive oil. So it's not an aerosol with the chemical, it's pure olive oil, but it comes out easily onto a pan. So we use that for most of our cooking. And then we typically don't use ghee or anything on the rotis we make. We don't put any ghee in our rice, except for our son. So kids, especially 5 and below, definitely 2 years and below, need healthy fat. But for the adults, we really, really try to limit the amount of fat, including ghee. I would say back in the day when we worked in farms all day, we needed a certain amount of ghee to get us through our day. Most of us, I would argue, typically don't need extra ghee beyond what we might use in a dish to cook. I'm going to read a question I see. Pooja ji, you mentioned that someone negatively commented on your son's hearing aid being visible. I have relatives who make comments about my appearance as well. Even though I know the comments are not valid, I don't know how to respond to them or shut them down. How would you suggest we handle these? So what I have found, with my son's hearing aid in particular, when someone is unkind about it, it's usually about where they're coming from. It's not actually about my son or me. They're having a day, or they're feeling self-conscious or angry because of themselves or something I might not know about or understand. So I've always handled it just by being loving to them, wishing them the best, whether it's internally or externally, and then simply just not engaging. I have never found that I'm going to convince anybody that they're wrong by going head to head with them. Um, an example, that was personal was at our Bellevue Heart here in Cleveland. It's a small group, and I didn't socially know anybody when we first joined. I live 23 minutes away from our ashram, and after a couple of months, a couple of aunties sat with us at lunch and were asking us about his hearing aid. And then one of the aunties followed up with us about his hearing aid again later in the shoe room. And it was not a kind conversation. It was, well, he's wearing a headband and he's a boy, and you really should think about it more. And I just said, we don't see it that way. I see this as a medical device that makes sure that he's safe because he can hear from all directions, and he really loves it. So I appreciate that you care about, him growing up to fit in and being happy. And I appreciate that you cared about me enough to approach me and talk to me. But I think we're okay for now. But thank you again for approaching me. And I just kept thanking her, and we've had many interactions since, and it's been a positive. And I've had, air hostess tell me, oh, he has to take his Bluetooth device off. Why is your 2-year-old wearing a Bluetooth thing? And we just smile and we say, oh, it's his hearing aid. Don't worry, he'll be fine. It won't set off your airplanes, whatever, which even that I don't think is real. I don't think we can hurt an airplane with our cell phone. But I found just being kind and loving back is honestly the best. And if you can't, if it's too sensitive or it's too painful, smile, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, and then it'll get easier with time. This is all I can say. And that's that song. You're surrounding yourself with the right people.
Lavinia.
Hi, Pooja. Hariom. Thank you for your awesome presentation. I've reflected so much even as soon as you started sharing. I've had an interesting couple months where I've just encountered a lot of like health issues within the family personally, and I'm just like trying to reconcile it from a spiritual perspective. Like you're a physician and you're a seeker, and just really reflecting on the quote that you had, that you're the driver, not the car. And just how do you kind of reconcile, obviously, even no matter how healthy we try to be, the body eventually is gonna kind of face issues and then eventually perish. So how do you keep that kind of thing in your mind when you're a physician, and how do you kind of advise your patients?
Advising my patients, I really try to do on a one-to-one basis after I get to know someone, just try to connect with them emotionally and what are they using their body for? What is their goal? And so that's really hard to generalize. But as far as how I do it, and this really may not apply to other people, but for me, especially my time at the VA working with my veterans, I've seen people who don't have limbs, who live incredibly productive lives, and they're really positive. And one in particular is a lady who's, I want to say late 20s. She has a toddler whom she gave birth to, and she has no arms because they were blown off with an IED in the Middle East. And she has toes and functional legs. So she can walk, and she has learned how to use her toes to feed her child and to fold laundry and to change the diaper. And she declines VA government resources in the US to say other people need it more. I'm good. I can walk. I have a job. My kid is, great and healthy, and we're good. And she's a single parent. And so I often think of her like when my leg was hurting and I was complaining that I couldn't run and I wanted to do this half marathon. I kept saying, okay, if she can be productive, she has purpose, I have no reason to complain. So at my stage in life, I try to remember her. Again, that may not work for other people. And then as we age, I think a lot of it comes down to whether you're 70, 80, 90, 105, you always have something to contribute. So even as the body is going till that last breath, till that last ability, if we've done a lot in the past, great. I can still do something today, whether it's writing an email or donating to the causes, attending the lectures and responding. There's typically something. And if you focus on what you can give, we tend to think less about what we don't have. And those would be my initial thoughts. I hope that's helpful.
Pooja, there was a question, and I think also a comment that I guess I'll kind of ask like a second question to this one. It's what are good protein sources for vegetarians and vegans? And I know like on the like they just say how much protein you need. Sometimes it's like, 1 gram per pound or kilo, or there's like it's such a high number when you're a vegetarian or vegan. Do you strive for that, or what do you recommend for those options for those who are vegetarian or vegan?
Yeah, vegan is definitely a little more difficult. And I would say part of this conversation then looks at things like your cholesterol level, because that is a lot of what becomes difficult when someone is vegan. A lot of the foods that have a lot of protein without any dairy or cheese tend to be higher in fats. Assuming that you've spoken to your doctor and that's not an issue, things like cashews, pea products, nut products tend to be great alternatives to milk-based products. So like pea milk, almond milk, those are very healthy. Those can be good sources. Definitely dals and the Indian foods can be also very healthy as well. There are the meat-free meat alternatives that are out there. They tend not to be healthier than meats, but they have good protein and can be good options as well. Like a black bean burger can be a great replacement for a chicken burger. And really, I think it's just being mindful that you get protein at every meal. And if you find that you're struggling, making your snacks higher in protein. So they make like the fake cheese sticks for vegan. That would be a good option if you're vegan. If you're more vegetarian, then things like cottage cheese, yogurt, milk, especially the skim milk, 1%, max 2%. I would never go higher than that for an adult. Um, the Indian food can be a great alternative as well. Egg whites are really good for you. Egg yolks have a lot of bad cholesterol. For someone who does not have issues, we typically recommend no more than 2 egg yolks per week. Many people do much more than that. The whites go crazy, they're amazing. But the yolks have a lot of bad cholesterol. Children should definitely get the yolks, but for adults, you want to limit them. And if you never have an egg yolk, that's fine. A lot of my Indian relatives really believe the yolk is necessary, and it is not from a medical perspective. The last thing I'll put out there, and this is more from the Indian perspective, we tend to put a lot of value on fresh food. That is always the best. But if you find, especially if you're someone who works or has kids or has an elderly parent they're taking care of, or you're in college and you have a microwave available, eating healthy in whatever way you can is better than not eating healthy. Skipping meals leads to things like overeating later. If you fast today, you'll probably be hungrier tomorrow and make poorer choices. Plan ahead. And like for me, I do a lot of bagged salads for lunch. They're not good for the environment. I don't like that there's the plastic in it, but I found if I try to meal prep salads, I fail. I've never been able to keep it up. But if I buy the bagged salad, I have a salad 5 days a week and then it's healthy. And we do have certain recipes I used canned foods for, and I would just rinse them out to get the sodium out with water and a chutney. There's an English word for chutney, colander. I couldn't think of, which can help get the salt out. But just making it achievable. Do your best, but you can't do it all. And sometimes you just have to choose the best of 2 options.
What are some tips for those who are underweight?
If you're underweight, we try to focus on protein and healthy fats. And so you might be someone who you have vegetables and fruits, but you flip the plate and you do a quarter vegetables and fruits, and you do a lot of healthy fat and a healthy protein. So I have 50 patients who I prescribe spoonfuls of peanut butter and ice cream to. You can, whatever you enjoy. If it's avocado, that can be a great option for fat as well. Figuring out what you like that you can do sustainably and measure your weight changes, especially every 4 days or every 10 days, and track it. especially if you are medically significantly underweight. You don't want to check every day because you'll have, especially as females, weight changes due to water weight. But 4th or 10th day tends to be the tracking method. You also can do things like Ensure or Boost, which are drinks that you can buy at pharmacies or at Target, Walmart, Costco. My family loves the strawberry version, so especially when we're traveling, we always carry a case in our trunk, and it's an easy meal, including for my son. And those can be great additions to have once or even up to 3 times a day at the most, especially for short periods of time.
No questions. Well, thank you so much again, Pooja, for being with us this evening and sharing everything that you did. And I believe you did share your email, right?
I did. I'll put it in the chat again, and then I'll send the slides out to, I think you guys have the slides. I'll send them again. It has my email at the end as well as some of the details.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Hari Om.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.